There are some signs of PTSD and mental health issues that are sometimes overlooked because they're so common and they're so simple. And I'd like to list 6 common symptoms that you need to get help. The first one is decision making. If you find it hard making the simplest decision, like let's say you go to a restaurant, you can't decide what to eat, you can't decide which movie to go and see, you've got a problem. And when it's a long-term indecision making, these are people that stay in their jobs that they hate forever. They stay in relationships that they should have released long ago. It makes for a very difficult life. The second one is boredom. If you find that you're bored often and that you find that you want others to entertain you, that type of thing, this is a major sign that you need to get some therapy. This is actually a lot worse than it sounds. But somebody who's bored all the time is lacking in looking at the fundamentals of their psyche. The third one is commitment. If you find it hard to stick to a task to completion, if you find it hard staying in a relationship, or you move around a lot, like you move from place to place, this is a sign that there's some unease in your mental capacities, and you need to go into therapy in order to learn more about this, or even self-educate yourself on what needs to be done. But this is another big red flag. The fourth one is promiscuity. If you find that you need sexual gratification in order to feel powerful in your life, this is a problem. It usually manifests in people who have been sexually assaulted or who are victims of child sexual abuse. It's a very common trait for people that have gone through some kind of trauma in their past. Usually they go one way or the other. They either don't enjoy sex, don't want to have sex, or they find they can maintain a certain amount of personal power by having multiple partners. This is a huge sign that you need to get help, because it always, in the end, turns around and bites you in the butt, because long term it cannot maintain itself. The fifth one is you hear about alcoholics, shopaholics, gamblers. Those are the common aholics that you hear. But most of the time it's because they have such negative consequences to the behavior. Yet there's one that has positive consequences, and that's being a workaholic. Being a workaholic actually is the perfect way to avoid looking at yourself and doing the work that needs to be done. It's a way of pushing all of your problems down deep and not letting it come to the surface. Now this one's a very dangerous one, because being a workaholic has consequences with your health eventually long term. You can't sustain that kind of schedule for decades. Not only that, but being a workaholic, it always comes back to haunt you. There's just no way that you can continue that on a long-term basis, and it usually explodes. Now, I've worked with several victims who, in order to push down the memories, the past pain remembrances that they had, they became workaholics, and the minute they retired, their whole life exploded, and many of them actually end up in psych wards because they have nervous breakdowns, can't handle it. So that's a very serious issue, being a workaholic. And the last one is my favorite. It's paralysis syndrome. And the reason I say it's my favorite is it's because it's the one that I suffer with. When I'm stressed out or extremely depressed or filled with anxiety, whatever triggers that type of thing with my mental health, I find that I shut down completely. And during the years that I was struggling to help myself, I didn't really understand why I could not move. I'd sit in front of the TV for hours and hours knowing I had other work to do, but I just couldn't do the work. I just sat there and zoned out. And that was the way that my body and my psyche could heal itself and to de-stress from the problems that I had surfacing in my life at the time. Paralysis syndrome I didn't even know was a syndrome of PTSD until about 5 years ago, when I just happened to be at the library and I found a book about it, and I found it fascinating because that's what I suffer with. So I'm not lazy, and I'm not a procrastinator. I have paralysis syndrome, and once you understand any of the above symptoms that I just talked about, when you understand it and accept it, then you can work on it through therapy or by educating yourself, and then you can move forward and have a really good life. So hopefully this is helpful, and I'll see you next time.